So what we're seeing in ours is it's not like necessarily a letter format, but it's sort of like a vignette, and it starts off by talking about a guy who followed everything his government said, and then one day found himself questioning whether or not he should do that, and then took pity on a people that his government wanted him to kill, and then changed, and then decided you shouldn't do everything your government tells you to do. So we sort of are feeling like it's getting at the idea of multiple perspectives and the idea of the thesis about, how you interact with your government. He has a thesis that is referred to, so it's never explicit. What about yours? Does anyone have an explicit thesis that someone that got 25? No.
Yeah, but we have something different. It's a poem, and it's addressing the multiple perspectives, in that it's looking at male, female, and how. And I can see that the thesis is addressed in that it's like the theme that's carried throughout the poem, and I think she does a pretty good job of trying to adhere to this dualism. The poem shifts kind of midway to be a man, and then it shifts back to I'm sexually a woman with male characteristics, and so it's a pretty interesting poem. I think that the rubric's kind of tough when you're dealing with a poem, and sometimes, like for instance, one of the things that you're really looking at is grammar and punctuation and things like that, and she's messing with capitalization, and she's messing with line breaks and all of those other kinds of things, which it seems like doesn't really fit into what he's trying to grade there.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there could be a different rubric for.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot of the same things, in the sense that, it's there, yes, it's creative, yes, it presents two perspectives, but it makes it really difficult to say, is there a thesis when you're dealing with a piece of creative writing, particularly with poetry, which has as its goal something entirely different than the thesis. So how do you, would it have been steadier to keep it focused on more prose types of prose types of writing, rather than allowing the poem, and then you could get afterwards say, okay, we've got these ideas, can we work with, how might these work as a poem? And then just step back, create the prose, and then create a poem. I don't know.
Too.
And I notice you guys want to say something over there too, so.
I was just thinking maybe for the poetry, if they're referring to a thesis, like we read the first poem and didn't know what thesis he was talking about, and I had to ask Matt maybe if they could put a paragraph either at the end of it or at the beginning saying the thesis I'm going to be discussing in this poem, or the thesis that sort of inspired this poem is this thesis about bias. I didn't realize what it was until we got into the second one, that he was talking about bias, and even still the first one really didn't make a lot of sense thinking about it as bias, because he doesn't really, I don't know, maybe it's just this particular student that didn't really grasp what bias was. But he talked a little bit more about it in the second one as opposed to the first one. The first one was just kind of all over the place.
And I didn't even know there was a second one, because he ends it, and it will end, comma. And I'm like, okay, so let's just go on here. And then this is a completely different poem. So, and then just the whole perspective, or the detail from only one perspective, I don't think he dives, and I think he just focuses on his ethnicity and being a male, and that's it. I don't think he goes into any
Multiple
great detail with other perspectives.
I think a general strength I'm seeing is the creativity and responses. Like we're actually getting, ours is like a really nice vignette, and yours sounds like a really interesting series of poems. And yours also sounds like something similar to that. And it also seems like the challenge is then somehow coming up with an explicit thesis.
I just have to say that I think that this is a really terrific poem, especially, I haven't seen very many kids at this age group developing something this sophisticated.
Uh-huh.
So she did a really nice job creating something that, hey, I read and I thought about, which doesn't always happen with a 15-year-old's home. And I think that, your kids took this assignment seriously, and this was not something that she wrote in half an hour. She spent a lot of time on it, and she thought about it, and she said something.
It certainly feels in our cases like that you got it composing an argument. I feel like there's an argument going on here, which took the synthesis of some key points that he was talking about. So for this child, you're definitely getting at what your standards were, and they're coming out, but if they're not coming out directly and probably as directly and explicitly as you'd like. It's like a rendition of what you're getting at.
Well, here, if you look at the rubric and it says for 25, your letter is free from grammatical and punctuation errors. But it's not.
In poetry.
It got 25 points.
He really
But
wants to
it's-
respond to that. We'll give you a minute. We're only, let's us wrap
Okay.
up in 2 minutes
Okay.
or 1 minute.
So, I think what happens is that you work yourself into a corner, then you feel compelled to go ahead and give the 25 points because, you didn't stipulate and you gave them the latitude. And so the answer to that may be, okay, you gotta be a little bit more careful with you gotta lay it out a little bit more because you gave her points for punctuation and grammar that aren't there and didn't have to be there. Does that? I agree. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's hear from the presenter, Matt, for a couple minutes, and then let's take a minute first and just think about what our final statement is. Then we'll hear from Matt. Then we'll do a whip around.